next to this kid, and it was like, wow, man, he didn't get to see 18. Now his little son gonna grow up in the same type of environment he growing in, probably even worse because things are unfortunately in many ways they keep declining in a lot of our neighborhoods and our communities and our families. Things keep declining, unfortunately,
There's a lot
overall.
of similarities,
Hmm.
between all of the cities: Chicago,
Oh yeah,
Detroit, St.
oh yeah.
Louis. You see it so much. I wanted to touch on one thing.
What's
You
that?
talked about a lot of the juveniles have been sexually assaulted. I had posted this article I read. It's almost 200 countries in the world, but they say America is perhaps the only country in the world where more men get raped and sexually
Hmm.
assaulted than any
Hmm.
other place in the world. And it was talking about prison, and then you think about it, the majority of the prisoners, they're African
Hmm.
American or
Hmm.
black or they Latino, which a lot of them are black. So
Yeah, yeah.
just asking you, as somebody that's experienced there, like, what do you feel about, number one, being a black man in American society today, and how do you feel black men are going to be 50 years from now or 100 years from now?
Yeah.
Given the society that we live in today, with
Mhm.
all of these things going on, including all of the the sexual abuse that men are going through, primarily African American men. How are they
Mhm.
going to behave and move in comparison to somebody like a Malcolm X? You feel what I'm saying? Like a man's
Man.
man. You feel me?
Right, right. And that's a great question right there. First, I want to say like, and which true. I got this book by a brother named, I don't know if you heard of, I think it's like Tommy Curry. I don't know if you heard, he got a book called The Black Man, the Man Not, or something like that. I got
Is he like a hustler?
no, no, he's not a hustler. He's a brother, PhD brother. And I get it to you. I wish I could quote it right.
Okay.
I got the book over. It's like The Man Not by Tommy Curry. If I'm probably quoting it wrong, but he talks about that in his book. Talking about how many black men are, he touches on a lot of black men are sexually abused. But I would say this, and I can understand how it's like that in a country like this because we got a country that don't really have a moral conscience, and a lot of times the sexual abuse that goes on with young men, young black men, we don't even look at it as sexual abuse because many of us will say, "Oh, if you're a young teenager and you messing with a grown woman, you look at it as you getting some credibility amongst your friends." Like I say, I'm hitting this older woman and all that. So it goes on in that way, and a lot of times we don't even know that still sexual, assault. It's still a minor dealing with a grown woman, and that's something that's under the radar that people don't talk about because when it happens, most guys are gonna be like, "Oh, she raped me or she's taking advantage of me." Like, "Oh, I'm getting this grown woman." And that's something that's quiet as kept that happens a lot in our community as well. But I just think that every generation, like since I say Malcolm's generation, it seems to me that it's been an attack on black manhood in general, black manhood in particular. Every generation, and it's things that I see from Malcolm that I didn't see in the generation that came after him as much. And the generation that came, my mama's generation, the things I saw in the men, I don't see in the men in my generation as much. And I'm seeing us more and more get, I would say effeminated. Like as far as men were once, the protectors, providers, and all that. Now I know a lot of men who I heard men say, I got to get me one of these nurses." Not one. I'm saying not one of these nurses in the sense that like, oh, she's just fine, but a nurse like because she got a good job and I want her to take care of me. I swear I heard that, and I'm not throwing shade at like people I grew up around, relatives and nothing, but I know like many of the men, I'm gonna say, and I'll say pretty much all of them. I hate to say it. In my generation, like my own family, which is like a reflection of larger black society, a lot of these guys they moved out on women. When I moved out on my own. So and I really don't. I really think is I'm hopeful because I got to keep some hope to be here. But I don't see unless you get brothers like me and and more brothers like me and you. I'm not as hopeful for the future generations because it's like not only are we dealing with sexual assault like in our community, incest, all these things are going in our home, a lot of things that we don't want to talk about that we sweep under the rug because it's too painful. And people don't like to revisit that pain because
Mhm.
it's painful. It's like an agenda to promote homosexuality and things like that to black men. And increasingly like black women, it's like it's a whole agenda for them to promote this thing. Like just think about every show you see now. It's like you have to have homosexuality in it or someone doing that. And I know it is a part of life. It happens, but it's like it's promoted. Like it's an agenda to
Right.
promote that. And when we as black people don't control the communication to our children's mind, we don't control the medium, we don't really have an impact on what's being fed to our children. And back in the day, the guy used to be the most important thing in our community, for the children in the home. Now it's the peer group. So, brother, you can have a child, you raising your kid to be have high morals and be upstanding, but if your kid's spending more time with their peers than you, which is typical, you don't know what they may be being exposed to with those kids. So you could be an upstanding guy, but you don't know what's going on in their kids. So I like places like Cleveland and Detroit. Like half of the homes in our cities and in the inner city probably have these problems of dysfunction and all type of stuff. Things we just rationalize as this is how it's supposed to be. But I'm not as hopeful because I don't see enough people stepping up. Like even in my own family with some of the young men, I tried to take time I would and encourage when I had a time. Uh, it's like they around me for a little while, but then they around all my other people that's on some bull crap. Even if these guys are not like effeminate, even if they like in the streets and they aggressive, that's still not the most positively productive role model they need as well. So it's just like I'm not as hopeful, but I love being a black man. If I had a choice, I'd come back as a black man 10 times over because
No, no
I
doubt.
love being a black man. I think I wouldn't want to be nothing else but a black man, man. I love it, but I'm not as hopeful for this generation because it's like so much of an assault on us, and I don't think uh, we're fighting like we need to fight. Like as hard, I think that will to fight with each generation, I think it has declined overall. Like the men, the will to fight, the desire to lead, to protect. I think it has declined. Because I think every generation has been an assault. And when you have people like the Panthers and like you have your uncles, I mean Cleveland, Afrofest, brothers like that and sisters like that. People like the Republic of New Africa in Detroit. When you had those people fighting, and those are the people we were looking up to. What they do, they lock those people up and kill those people. Then you had the black exploitation thing and brothers want to be like Superfly and all that because you know how powerful the medium is. Brother Marvel said the media is the most powerful entity on earth, and you see that now. They're using our own culture against us. Something we created is being used against us. So I'm not as hopeful that these next generation, but I have hope will be able to to withstand that because I don't think there's enough people and enough in our community to help them really fight that off. And I think I think the homosexual thing, like in our community, I think it will continue to grow. I think it will continue to grow, and if not throwing shade at nobody, that's your lifestyle, but if everybody, if a significant number of men become like that, then how you gonna really produce, and how you gonna really keep your family strong, whatever. So I'm not as I got hope, but I got to be honest, I don't. It don't look good to me. You know, it don't look good to me.
Right, man. I appreciate you sharing your perspective on it. And it's not in this episode, but earlier we was talking about visiting Africa and going to places like Ghana and Senegal. And
Hmm.
from my experience, like I was saying earlier, Americans, we kind of view the world one way, and we try to reflect our views on the entire world. It should be this way or that way. But when you go to other countries, you'll see the roles of the man and the woman is more defined. Where in
Yeah.
America, it's getting kind of blurry, particularly in the African American community, where it's like
Yes.
the women kind of getting more masculine, the men kind of getting more feminine. So that's why I'm
Hmm.
like, well, a lot of men or women may not even know what they supposed to be doing. You know what I'm saying? Where in other cultures is more rigid, like this is the way it is. And when
Hmm.
you visit Africa, you will see a lot of those stressors and oppression, especially the racism. You won't even have to deal with a lot of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because their culture
Hmm.
is more intact. You know what I'm saying? So
Right, right.
yeah, I appreciate you hitting on them notes though.
And I agree with what you said too, because at one point we had that in the states. At one
Hmm.
point, like Black America in particular, we had the highest marriage rate. We was the quickest people to get educated after slavery and all that. So we had these things. We and how, it's like what happened with us is when we started to integrate more. That's when the problems came. Like it was always a problem, but when we was kind of like separate, like kind of doing our own thing, we were much better off. But it's like as we integrated into mainstream society, it's like that's when our values really decline more and more. And so I agree because it's like we don't have a rites of passage. Like when does a black man in America know he a man? You done heard this growing up in Cleveland, like, oh, you a man, you get a little hair on your chest, or you a man when you lose your virginity, or you a man when you whoop somebody butt or something like that. No, it ain't got nothing to do with us doing positive things like, being a good father, being a good husband, being a protector, being a provider, being an activist, being a leader. Doing something positive got something to do with things that really don't matter or things that's negative. Because like we've been cut out a lot of ways, not making excuses. And when you've been cut out so much, like we have been or been deprived, that's when people come up with things to survive or to make themselves feel good about themselves. Then you have the subculture of violence, where you have in our communities a lot of time the drug dealers looked at as more